Welcome, dear viewers, to this journey through one of the most defining moments in human history, the Normandy Invasion, known to many as D-Day. Today we embark on a voyage across time, retracing the footsteps of ordinary men who achieved extraordinary deeds. On June 6, 1944, the largest amphibious assault ever attempted crashed against the shores of northern France. It was a moment when courage, sacrifice, and strategy converged to alter the course of the Second World War and the destiny of the modern world. This documentary will take you beyond the headlines of history books. We will dive into the hidden stories of soldiers, commanders, and civilians caught in the storm of war. From the meticulous planning rooms of Allied generals to the sandy beaches stained with unimaginable sacrifice, each chapter will unveil the drama, the triumph, and the tragedy of that fateful day. Whether you are a history enthusiast or a curious explorer of the past, this is more than just a recount of battles. It is a tribute to the human spirit under fire. So take your seat, open your mind, and prepare to relive the turning point of the 20th century, the Normandy Invasion. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship at dawn, the salty wind stinging your face as the horizon burns red with fire. Ahead lies a hostile shore, fortified, defended, waiting for you. You clutch your weapon, heart pounding, knowing that in mere minutes you'll charge into history. Behind you, thousands of ships stretch across the sea. Around you, brothers in arms whisper prayers, clutch photographs, or sit in silent dread. Every man knows the truth. Some will not survive the day. This was D-Day, June 6, 1944, the moment when the fate of the world hinged on courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable resolve. Over 150,000 Allied soldiers hurled themselves into the jaws of hell, storming the beaches of Normandy against barbed wire, machine guns, and walls of steel. It was a gamble so daring, so colossal, that failure meant prolonging tyranny, but success opened the road to liberation. This is not just a story of battles and strategies. It is a story of fear and hope, of men who faced the impossible and refused to back down. Today we will step into their world and witness the... By 1940, Nazi Germany had swept across Europe like a storm. France fell in just 6 weeks, leaving the continent under Hitler's iron grip. Britain stood alone, battered by the Blitz, while the Soviet Union fought for survival in the East. The United States, though still distant, was already feeding the war machine with weapons and supplies. The world seemed locked in a struggle, where tyranny was winning. The occupied nations of Europe lived in fear. German soldiers patrolled cobblestone streets, their boots echoing against centuries-old buildings. Resistance movements whispered in secret, sabotaging railways and spreading coded messages, but their strength was limited. The Nazis ruled with terror. Public executions, mass arrests, and brutal reprisals kept entire populations under control. Meanwhile, the Allies knew that victory would demand more than defense. The Soviets pressed for a second front, as the Red Army bled against the Wehrmacht's advance. Britain and America agreed. They had to strike back in the West. The road to liberation began not with ships and soldiers, but with maps, debates, and long nights of planning. Yet before any invasion could be launched, the Allies needed time. They fought in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy, sharpening their strategy and testing their armies. Each battle was a rehearsal for something greater. By 1943, the plan was forming: an invasion of France, the beating heart of Hitler's empire. But to understand Normandy, one must understand the shadow that fell before it. For 4 long years, Europe endured the darkness of occupation. Families were torn apart. Cities lived under curfew. Children grew up under the watch of foreign soldiers. The Allies knew that when they finally returned to France, they carried not only rifles and flags, they carried the hopes of millions who longed for freedom. The war before Normandy was not just about armies and battles. It was about waiting. Waiting for the day the tide would turn. Waiting for the chance to strike back, waiting for liberation. That waiting was about to end. By 1943, the Allies had secured victories in North Africa and Italy, but the true liberation of Western Europe remained a distant dream. The idea of opening a second front in France became urgent, not only to relieve pressure on the Soviet Union, but to finally strike at the heart of Hitler's empire. Thus, Operation Overlord was born, a plan so ambitious that it would require months of preparation, coordination across nations, and an unwavering resolve to overcome almost certain bloodshed. The enormity of the task was staggering. The Allies needed to transport hundreds of thousands of troops across the English Channel, land them on heavily fortified beaches, and secure a foothold to drive inland. Every detail mattered: timing, logistics, weather, and secrecy. The planners knew that any mistake could turn triumph into disaster. At the Supreme Headquarters in England, generals and strategists worked tirelessly. Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander, balanced the ambitions of British and American commanders, while keeping a careful eye on intelligence reports. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery meticulously reviewed landing plans, while naval officers calculated tidal patterns, beach gradients, and the firepower required to suppress German defenses. The planning was not just about maps and movements, it was about psychology. Allies had to consider the morale of soldiers who would face machine guns, artillery, and mines upon landing. They had to anticipate every German countermeasure and develop deception plans to mislead Hitler about the true landing location. Operation Overlord was more than a battle. It was a massive gamble on the lives of men and the fate of nations. Meanwhile, soldiers trained relentlessly. Landing craft simulations, mock beach assaults, and night exercises prepared troops for the chaos they would soon encounter. Air forces practiced bombing runs, paratroopers rehearsed night drops, engineers designed portable harbors and amphibious tanks. Across England, the hum of preparation was everywhere, a reminder that the invasion was not merely a plan, it was destiny taking shape. As the pieces fell into place, one reality remained. June 1944 would mark the day when ordinary men would face extraordinary trials. Operation Overlord was the spark that would ignite the liberation of Europe, but the path ahead would demand courage beyond imagination. By 1942, the tide of World War II demanded unity among the Allies. The British Empire, battered yet unbroken, the United States, newly entering the war after Pearl Harbor, and the Soviet Union, reeling from the German onslaught, knew that defeating Hitler required unprecedented cooperation. At the center of this alliance were three towering figures: Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Joseph Stalin. Their leadership would define strategy, diplomacy, and the future of Europe. Churchill, the indomitable British Prime Minister, was a man of fire and rhetoric. He understood the psychological war as well as the tactical one. His speeches rallied a nation under siege and reminded the world that Britain would never surrender. Across the Atlantic, Roosevelt provided the industrial and military backbone. With programs like Lend-Lease, he ensured Britain and the Soviet Union had the resources to sustain prolonged combat. Stalin, hardened by decades of political struggle and immense suffering, demanded results. The Soviet Union had already absorbed the brunt of Hitler's blitzkrieg and exacted a heavy price in lives. The three leaders met in conferences such as Tehran in 1943, where difficult compromises were made. Roosevelt sought a direct invasion of France to relieve pressure on the Eastern Front. Churchill was cautious, wary of committing to an invasion too early. Stalin pressed insistently, reminding them that millions of Soviet soldiers and civilians had perished. Despite differences in style, temperament, and ideology, they shared one goal: the defeat of Nazi Germany. Behind the closed doors of grand halls, maps were spread across tables. Decisions were made on troop deployments, landing sites, and timelines for offensives. Arguments flared, compromises were reached, and strategies were forged. Every decision carried weight, for it would determine not only the success of the impending invasion, but the very fate of Europe. The alliance was not just political, it had practical implications. American soldiers trained in Britain, British forces coordinated with French resistance fighters, and Soviet armies continued to pin down German divisions in the east. Communication, coordination, and trust, even among ideological rivals, became the invisible bridge that would make Operation Overlord possible. The Grand Alliance represented more than 3 nations working together. It symbolized hope for a world desperate for liberation. Through diplomacy, courage, and sheer determination, these leaders laid the foundation for the day when Allied forces would storm the beaches of Normandy and begin the liberation of Western Europe. The success of Operation Overlord depended not only on brute force, but on the art of deception. The Allies understood that Hitler's forces were heavily entrenched along the French coastline, anticipating an invasion. To increase the chances of success, they needed to mislead the Germans about when and where the attack would occur. This elaborate ruse was called Operation Bodyguard, a campaign of intelligence, trickery, and audacity. Operation Bodyguard was a masterclass in deception. Its goal was simple: convince the Germans that the Allies would land in locations other than Normandy. One part, Operation Fortitude North, suggested an invasion of Norway, while Operation Fortitude South pointed toward the Pas de Calais, the shortest route from Britain to France. Dummy tanks, inflatable landing craft, and fake radio transmissions all played roles in fooling German intelligence. Even high-ranking double agents contributed, feeding misinformation directly to the enemy. Every detail was meticulously planned. The Allies created fake armies, complete with insignias, headquarters, and even the illusion of movement. Soldiers rehearsed maneuvers in empty fields, and decoy installations were constructed along the coastlines. Meanwhile, real troops prepared in secrecy, training for the actual assault on Normandy's beaches. The Germans, misled by false signals and clever disinformation, reinforced the wrong sectors, leaving Normandy less defended than they believed. Intelligence officers worked tirelessly, analyzing enemy communications, monitoring troop movements, and ensuring that every deception aligned with the larger plan. It was a high-stakes game of chess, where one mistake could expose the invasion and doom thousands of soldiers. Yet the Allies pressed on, understanding that victory would rely as much on cunning as courage. Operation Bodyguard demonstrated the power of psychological warfare. German commanders, convinced that Normandy was a diversion, delayed reinforcing key positions. By the time the Allied troops hit the beaches on June 6, they encountered resistance, but not the overwhelming force the enemy might have brought. The success of Bodyguard had tilted the scales, proving that war was as much about brains as it was about brawn. Ultimately, this campaign of deception showcased the ingenuity, patience, and creativity of the Allied forces. Behind the chaos of D-Day lay months of careful planning, secret operations, and minds working tirelessly to outthink the enemy. Without Operation Bodyguard, the Normandy invasion might have been far bloodier, or even doomed. Victory in Normandy would depend not just on strategy and deception, but on sheer firepower and coordination. The Allies faced the enormous challenge of moving hundreds of thousands of troops, tanks, artillery, and supplies across the English Channel to land on fortified beaches. Every piece of equipment, every vessel, and every soldier had to be ready for a moment that could decide the course of history. In the ports and shipyards of southern England, a logistical marvel unfolded. Engineers, shipbuilders, and military planners worked tirelessly to prepare landing craft capable of ferrying soldiers and armored vehicles directly onto the beaches. Amphibious tanks, nicknamed duplex drive, were adapted to swim through shallow waters and break through enemy fortifications. Hundreds of landing ships were retrofitted with ramps, flotation devices, and protective armor. The scale of preparation was unprecedented, a testament to Allied industrial might and ingenuity. Soldiers drilled daily, practicing beach assaults under the supervision of seasoned instructors. They carried full gear, navigated obstacles, and coordinated with tanks and artillery support. The Americans, British, and Canadians each had specialized units, trained to work seamlessly in multinational operations. Engineers rehearsed clearing mines and obstacles under simulated enemy fire, knowing that every second would count on D-Day. Beyond vehicles and troops, logistics demanded meticulous planning. Food, ammunition, medical supplies, and fuel had to be stockpiled and loaded onto ships in precise quantities. The Allies even constructed Mulberry harbors, portable artificial ports that could be towed to Normandy and assembled to facilitate the unloading of equipment. Every detail mattered. A delay in supplies could mean disaster on the front lines. This massive buildup showcased the combination of innovation, discipline, and human endurance. From the officers coordinating shipping schedules to the engineers modifying tanks, every participant understood that the success of the invasion rested on their collective efforts. They were building more than a war machine. They were constructing the foundation for liberation. As June approached, the beaches of Normandy awaited a storm of men, machines, and courage. The Allies' preparation transformed uncertainty into calculated power. Tanks, landing craft, and soldiers were not just tools, they were the instruments of history, ready to change the fate of Europe forever. Long before the first soldiers set foot on Normandy's beaches, the skies above France were alive with preparation. The Allies understood that air superiority was essential to the success of D-Day. Controlling the air would prevent German reinforcements, disrupt supply lines, and provide vital support to the landing forces below. The air war was a prelude to the invasion, a campaign of precision, destruction, and relentless pressure on the enemy. Allied bomber squadrons targeted railways, bridges, and roads to paralyze German logistics. Every bridge destroyed, every rail line severed, meant a delay in enemy reinforcements reaching the coast. Fighter planes patrolled the skies to intercept Luftwaffe attacks and maintain dominance above the battlefield. The coordination required was immense. Pilots navigated flak-filled skies, unpredictable weather, and complex formations to strike their targets effectively. Paratroopers relied on the air war as well. Night before the invasion, hundreds of Allied planes dropped thousands of soldiers behind enemy lines to secure key positions, and sow confusion. The risk was enormous. Some planes were lost to anti-aircraft fire, and paratroopers were scattered across unfamiliar terrain. Yet the airborne operations were crucial in securing bridges, roads, and towns to aid the success of the beach landings. In addition to bombers and fighters, reconnaissance aircraft gathered intelligence on German positions, fortifications, and troop movements. Photo reconnaissance allowed planners to refine strategies and adjust landing sites, ensuring that the invasion would not be met with complete surprise. Precision, timing, and coordination defined every mission. The air war was also a psychological weapon. The constant roar of engines and the destructive path of bombs demoralized German troops, making them hesitant to reinforce the beaches. Civilians, too, felt the tension, often fleeing towns before the bombardment, adding to the chaos faced by the enemy. By the morning of June 6th, the air had already prepared the battlefield. Bombing raids had weakened fortifications, reconnaissance had informed strategy, and airborne operations had created confusion behind enemy lines. When the first landing craft approached the beaches, the Allies were not just soldiers, they were the culmination of months of air campaigns designed to turn the tide. The air war was invisible, deadly, and decisive, proving that control of the skies was as critical as boots on the sand. While Allied generals planned Operation Overlord and soldiers trained in England, a secret war was already raging behind enemy lines. The French resistance, a network of courageous men and women, prepared to sabotage, spy, and support the coming invasion. Though under constant threat from German patrols and collaborators, these ordinary citizens performed extraordinary acts of bravery to help liberate their homeland. The resistance was not a single organization but a coalition of groups with varying political and ideological backgrounds. Communists, Gaullists, and independent patriots often worked together, united by one goal: the defeat of Nazi occupation. They distributed clandestine newspapers, passed intelligence to the Allies, and conducted daring sabotage missions on railways, bridges, and supply depots. Each act was a spark in a wider campaign designed to weaken German defenses and disrupt reinforcements. Communication with London was vital. Using coded radio transmissions, resistance leaders reported German troop movements, fortifications, and morale. Couriers, often young men and women, risked capture or death carrying messages through forests, villages, and enemy checkpoints. Their work allowed Allied planners to adjust strategies, target vital infrastructure, and ensure that the invasion had the greatest chance of success. As June approached, sabotage intensified. Rail lines were cut, telephone poles damaged, and roads mined. Villages became hubs of clandestine activity, with civilians hiding weapons, explosives, and intelligence for Allied forces. Resistance members trained in secret, rehearsing ambushes and coordinating with paratroopers who would be dropped behind enemy lines. Every mission carried immense risk, but the knowledge that the liberation of France depended on their actions spurred them forward. The psychological impact was significant as well. German troops, constantly wary of sabotage and ambush, were forced to divert resources to guard supply lines and patrol towns. Fear and uncertainty spread among the occupiers, giving the Allies a subtle but crucial advantage. Ultimately, the resistance symbolized the courage and resilience of a subjugated people. Though often overshadowed by large-scale battles, their contribution to D-Day was indispensable. Their actions created chaos, confusion, and opportunity, paving the way for the storming of Normandy's beaches. Ordinary citizens became unsung heroes, proving that even in the darkest times, the spirit of defiance could illuminate the path to freedom. By 1943, Adolf Hitler recognized the inevitability of an Allied invasion in Western Europe. Tasked with preparing Germany's defenses, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel took command of the Atlantic Wall, a massive network of fortifications stretching from Norway to the French coast. Rommel's mission was clear: make any invasion of France so costly that the Allies would be repelled or forced to reconsider. The Atlantic Wall was more than a line of bunkers. It was a complex system of concrete fortifications, artillery emplacements, minefields, anti-tank obstacles, and barbed wire, designed to halt amphibious assaults. Rommel inspected beaches personally, envisioning the carnage an invading army would face. He often remarked that the best defense was to strike the Allies on the shore, preventing them from gaining a foothold. Under Rommel's guidance, German troops trained rigorously. Infantry units practiced repelling beach assaults while engineers laid mines and built obstacles. Coastal artillery units targeted likely landing sites, their guns calibrated to destroy landing craft before troops could disembark. Camouflage was applied to bunkers, and fake installations were constructed to mislead Allied reconnaissance. Every detail was designed to create maximum confusion, delay, and casualties. Rommel understood that time was a crucial factor. The longer he could hold the Allies on the beaches, the more reinforcements could arrive. He famously stated, "The first 50 meters of the beach will decide the battle." His obsession with fortifications sometimes brought him into conflict with other German commanders, who preferred mobile counterattacks over static defense. Yet Rommel's focus on the coastline made the Atlantic Wall an imposing challenge for the invading forces. Meanwhile, morale among German troops was a mixture of confidence and apprehension. Many were veterans of the Eastern Front, hardened by years of brutal fighting, but they faced a well-equipped, determined enemy. Rommel's presence, inspections, and strict discipline impressed upon them the seriousness of the upcoming battle. The stage was set when Allied ships approached. German defenders would be ready, prepared to unleash devastation on the beaches of Normandy. Despite Rommel's efforts, cracks existed. Supply shortages, incomplete fortifications, and overstretched forces meant that the Atlantic Wall, for all its strength, was not impenetrable. The Allies would later exploit these weaknesses, but at this stage, Rommel's defenses appeared formidable. The tension along the coast mirrored the calm before a storm, the storm that would erupt on June 6, 1944, forever changing the course of history. The fate of D-Day hinged on one uncontrollable factor. The weather. June 1944 brought uncertainty, as storms battered the English Channel and skies over France threatened to derail Operation Overlord. Planners knew that calm seas, low winds, and moonlight were essential for a successful landing. Any miscalculation could turn months of preparation into catastrophe. Allied meteorologists worked tirelessly, analyzing data from ships, aircraft, and weather stations. They studied wind speed, tidal patterns, and cloud cover to determine the narrow window for invasion. A delay of even one day could push the operation back weeks, risking German detection and losing the element of surprise. The first planned date, June 5, 1944, was met with heavy storms. Landing craft could not safely cross the channel, and paratroopers could not drop accurately behind enemy lines. Eisenhower made the critical decision to postpone. Morale hung in the balance as soldiers and commanders waited, hoping for favorable conditions. A break in the storm arrived on June 6. Forecasters, including British meteorologist group Captain James Stagg, predicted a short window of calmer weather. Eisenhower decided to seize the opportunity. The gamble was immense. Thousands of lives depended on the accuracy of forecasts and the timing of the assault. If they were wrong, the beaches would become a graveyard. This decision highlights the often overlooked role of science in warfare. Meteorology, intelligence, and planning intersected with courage and human endurance. Without this gamble, D-Day might have been delayed indefinitely, giving the Germans time to reinforce their defenses and possibly altering the outcome of World War II. As midnight fell on June 5, 1944, thousands of Allied paratroopers were airborne, plunging into the darkness of occupied France. Their mission was critical: secure key bridges, disrupt German communications, and create chaos behind enemy lines to support the impending beach landings. These soldiers would face disorientation, scattered drops, and the deadly threat of enemy fire. Flying in silence, planes carrying the paratroopers crossed the English Channel. Pilots navigated by moonlight, relying on minimal instruments to avoid detection and ensure accurate drops. Soldiers gripped their parachutes and weapons, aware that landing in the wrong field could mean immediate capture or death. The night was tense, each second stretching as they approached the Normandy countryside. Upon release, paratroopers descended into darkness, forests, and fields, often landing far from intended drop zones due to miscalculations and anti-aircraft fire. Scattered and alone, small groups quickly reorganized, following pre-planned rendezvous points. Their training in improvisation and communication would determine survival and mission success. The chaos created by these airborne forces delayed German reinforcements and created confusion among enemy troops. Bridges were destroyed, roads blocked, and patrols ambushed. Even when landing far from objectives, paratroopers adapted, forming ad hoc squads to continue their mission. Their courage and resilience bought precious time for the troops storming the beaches at dawn. The paratrooper operation exemplified risk, skill, and audacity. Operating in near-total darkness with the enemy on high alert, these soldiers embraced uncertainty and danger. By morning, their actions had already begun shaping the battlefield, demonstrating that success in Normandy depended on more than just strength. It required precision, coordination, and unwavering bravery. The paratroopers' descent into Normandy was far from orderly. Many landed miles from their intended drop zones, scattered across forests, fields, and villages. In the confusion, small groups had to improvise, using training, wits, and courage to fulfill their missions. The night was filled with fear, uncertainty, and the constant threat of enemy fire. Some soldiers landed in enemy-held villages, immediately engaging in skirmishes with German patrols. Others became lost in dense woods, regrouping hours later. Communication was limited, radios were scarce, and often damaged during jumps. Despite this, paratroopers demonstrated resilience, forming ad hoc squads to complete objectives like destroying bridges, blocking roads, and ambushing enemy patrols. The German defenders, startled by the sudden appearance of paratroopers in unexpected locations, faced confusion. Their communications disrupted, and roads blocked. Reinforcements could not reach the beaches in time. Every action by these scattered units compounded the chaos, making the German response slower and less coordinated. The night also tested leadership and morale. Officers and NCOs had to organize scattered men, instill confidence, and make rapid decisions under fire. Courage was contagious. Small victories, like capturing an enemy outpost or blowing a bridge, boosted morale and inspired nearby soldiers to fight on despite exhaustion and fear. By the early hours of June 6th, the paratroopers had achieved their objectives despite being scattered and outnumbered. Their actions secured key positions, delayed enemy reinforcements, and paved the way for the beach landings. The chaos of the night demonstrated that adaptability and bravery could turn disarray into strategic advantage. This episode of the invasion highlights the human element of warfare. Courage, improvisation, and determination can be just as powerful as planning and firepower. The scattered paratroopers, fighting against the odds, embodied the spirit of D-Day and set the stage for the historic assault on Normandy's beaches. As dawn approached on June 6, 1944, one of the first strategic objectives of D-Day was Pegasus Bridge, a vital crossing over the Caen Canal near Bénouville. Capturing it would prevent German reinforcements from reaching the eastern beaches and secure the Allies' advance inland. The mission was assigned to a small group of British airborne troops, paratroopers from the 6th Airborne Division, in a daring operation that would mark the first victory of D-Day. In the early hours, gliders silently approached the drop zone under moonlight. Soldiers knew there was no room for error. Landing too early, too late, or in the wrong position could compromise the mission. The gliders touched down near the bridge with precision, bringing men and light equipment right to the enemy's doorstep. Within minutes, British troops engaged German defenders, moving quickly to secure both ends of the bridge. The fighting was intense but brief. Using speed, surprise, and careful coordination, the paratroopers overcame machine gun nests, cut barbed wire, and captured the bridge intact. Their success was critical. By holding Pegasus Bridge, they blocked German armor from moving south and provided a safe route for incoming Allied forces from the beaches. The mission's audacity and effectiveness made it an iconic moment in the invasion. Pegasus Bridge symbolized the courage and precision of airborne forces. The operation demonstrated how small, disciplined units could achieve strategic objectives far larger than their numbers might suggest. This victory boosted morale and signaled that the Allies were executing their plans with determination and skill. Omaha Beach, the American landing zone in Normandy, was perhaps the most formidable challenge of D-Day. Stretched across 5 kilometers of heavily fortified coastline, it was defended by German bunkers, artillery, barbed wire, and minefields. The men of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions faced a hellish landscape as they prepared to storm the beach under relentless enemy fire. At dawn, waves of landing craft approached, carrying soldiers, tanks, and supplies. The roar of machine guns and artillery greeted them, and many were struck before reaching the shore. Chaos erupted as men disembarked into waist-deep water, navigating obstacles while under withering fire. Despite the carnage, soldiers pressed forward, driven by training, camaraderie, and the urgency of the mission. The beach became a scene of unimaginable bravery and sacrifice. Medics worked under fire, dragging the wounded to relative safety. Officers rallied troops, shouting orders and guiding men through deadly zones. Engineers attempted to clear paths through barbed wire and mines, often under direct fire from enemy bunkers. Every step forward cost lives, yet the determination to secure the beach and advance inland never faltered. The landing at Omaha Beach was costly. Thousands of American soldiers fell, and survivors faced exhaustion, trauma, and fear. Yet their courage created a foothold that would expand with reinforcements. The heroism of individuals, throwing themselves onto enemy positions, covering comrades, and pressing forward, despite overwhelming odds, turned disaster into a crucial victory. Omaha Beach became emblematic of the price of liberation. The sand was soaked with courage and sacrifice, a stark reminder that freedom is never granted without struggle. By the afternoon, the beachhead was secured, and the Allies were poised to continue their advance into occupied France, beginning the liberation of Europe. On the western end of the Normandy beaches, Utah Beach presented a very different challenge for American forces. Less heavily defended than Omaha, it was nevertheless fraught with obstacles, strong currents, and confusing terrain. Soldiers of the 4th Infantry Division faced not only German defenses, but also the unpredictable tides of the English Channel, which scattered units and disrupted plans. Landing began at dawn. Many soldiers found themselves miles from their intended positions due to miscalculations in navigation and strong currents. Despite the confusion, the troops adapted quickly, reorganizing into effective combat groups. Their training and discipline allowed them to overcome barriers, engage enemy positions, and push inland, achieving objectives faster than planners had anticipated. Engineer units played a vital role, clearing obstacles, mines, and barbed wire. They enabled the infantry and tanks to advance. Casualties occurred, but the lighter defenses compared to Omaha allowed more troops to survive the initial landing. German soldiers, caught off guard and overwhelmed, were quickly suppressed by coordinated American fire. Utah Beach demonstrated that flexibility and leadership could turn initial confusion into advantage. Small unit commanders made real-time decisions, guiding scattered soldiers to targets and adjusting to unexpected conditions. Troops advanced inland, securing bridges and towns, opening the way for follow-on forces. By the end of the day, Utah Beach was firmly in Allied hands, with far fewer casualties than neighboring Omaha, illustrating that preparation and adaptability were as important as courage. The landing at Utah Beach reflected the unpredictable nature of war. Even meticulously planned operations could be disrupted, but determination, improvisation, and leadership turned uncertainty into success. The beach became a launching point for the liberation of Normandy, a symbol of effective execution under challenging conditions. Gold Beach, assigned to British forces, represented another critical sector of the Normandy landings. Stretching across 5 kilometers, it was heavily defended by German bunkers, machine guns, and artillery. The objective was clear: secure the beach, capture the town of Bayou, and link up with neighboring American and Canadian forces to consolidate the beachhead. The British 50th Infantry Division, supported by specialized armored units, began landing at dawn. Naval bombardment had softened some German defenses, but machine gun nests and mortars still claimed lives as soldiers waded ashore. Coordination between infantry, engineers, and armored units was key to advancing under fire. Engineers cleared paths through minefields and barbed wire, while Churchill tanks provided cover against enemy fortifications. Soldiers advanced steadily, using the cover of smoke and armor to suppress German positions. The beach, though deadly, was gradually secured, thanks to meticulous planning and disciplined execution. By mid-morning, British forces had captured key positions and pushed inland toward Bayou. Their advance faced pockets of resistance, but effective leadership and combined arms tactics enabled the troops to overcome obstacles. The successful landing at Gold Beach not only secured a crucial section of the coast, but also relieved pressure on the neighboring beaches, demonstrating the importance of coordination across the Allied front. Gold Beach exemplified British resolve and tenacity. Despite heavy fire and fortified defenses, the soldiers' determination and training ensured the objectives were met. By evening, the beachhead was consolidated, enabling further operations to liberate Normandy. The landing showcased the effectiveness of combined arms, discipline, and courage under fire. Juno Beach, assigned to Canadian forces, stretched along a 5-kilometer coastline, heavily defended by German fortifications. The Canadian 3rd Infantry Division, supported by specialized armored units, faced intense fire, mines, and obstacles as they prepared to storm the shore. Their mission was to secure the beach, capture key towns, and link with British forces at Gold Beach. At dawn, the first waves of Canadian troops hit the water. Machine guns, mortars, and artillery pounded the landing craft, and many soldiers were struck before reaching the sand. Despite heavy casualties, the Canadians pressed forward, relying on training, courage, and discipline. Engineer units cleared paths through barbed wire and mines, while tanks provided cover, suppressing enemy positions. The Canadians faced stiff resistance but adapted quickly. Small unit leaders made real-time decisions, coordinating infantry, and armored advances. Paratroopers and reconnaissance units assisted in navigating obstacles and targeting fortified positions. By mid-morning, Canadian forces had secured the beachhead, pushing inland and capturing strategic positions that ensured the success of adjacent sectors. Juno Beach demonstrated the bravery and resilience of the Canadian troops. Despite facing strong defenses and sustaining losses, their determination and tactical flexibility enabled them to overcome challenges. Their success was critical in linking the beaches and consolidating the Allied front, proving that courage, planning, and execution could turn the tide of battle. Sword Beach, assigned to British forces, was the easternmost landing zone in Normandy. Its objective was to secure the beach, capture the town of Ouistreham, and advance inland toward the city of Caen. The British 3rd Infantry Division, supported by armored units, faced well-prepared German defenses, including artillery, bunkers, and obstacles along the shoreline. The landing began at dawn, with soldiers moving through rough seas under heavy fire. Naval bombardments softened some positions, but German defenders still inflicted casualties on the advancing troops. Soldiers relied on training, coordination with armor, and quick decision-making to overcome deadly obstacles. Engineer units worked to clear paths through mines and barbed wire, enabling infantry and tanks to move forward. As the day progressed, British forces pushed inland, capturing towns and securing key positions. They faced pockets of resistance but adapted using combined arms tactics, artillery support, and close coordination with airborne and naval units. By evening, the beachhead was firmly established, providing a base for further operations toward Caen. Sword Beach highlighted the importance of planning, leadership, and persistence under fire. The British troops' ability to advance under heavy opposition demonstrated their resolve and skill. Their success not only secured the eastern flank of the invasion, but also linked with Canadian forces at Juno Beach, forming a continuous Allied front along the Normandy coast. By the end of D-Day, the Allied forces faced the critical task of linking the 5 beachheads into a continuous front. Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword had been secured, but the terrain, scattered resistance, and German counterattacks threatened to fragment the gains. The next challenge was coordination, communication, and consolidation to ensure that the invasion lines could withstand enemy retaliation. Units from different nations, American, British, and Canadian, worked together to connect the beaches. Engineers constructed roads and bridges, allowing tanks and supply vehicles to move inland. Infantry units pushed through villages and fields, clearing pockets of German resistance. Coordination was crucial. The success of one sector depended on the stability of its neighbors. Communication lines were established using radios, runners, and signal flares to synchronize movements across miles of chaotic terrain. The effort was not without danger. Snipers, artillery, and counterattacks threatened to disrupt progress. Soldiers remained vigilant, defending newly gained positions while advancing toward connecting points. Small unit leadership became essential as officers adapted to rapidly changing conditions, directing troops to secure strategic points and maintain momentum. By evening, the front was largely continuous. The beaches were no longer isolated entry points, but a cohesive invasion line stretching across Normandy. Supplies and reinforcements could move freely, and Allied forces were prepared for the push deeper into occupied France. The linking of the beaches symbolized the transformation from a precarious landing to a stable foothold, demonstrating the importance of logistics, coordination, and shared determination among multinational forces. The consolidation also showcased human endurance and ingenuity. Soldiers, engineers, medics, and commanders worked tirelessly in difficult conditions, often under fire to ensure the success of the invasion. By nightfall, the Allies had achieved what once seemed impossible, a unified front that would be the springboard for the liberation of Europe. Even as the Allies consolidated their beachheads, German forces launched counterattacks to push them back into the sea. Units from the 21st Panzer Division and other reserves moved rapidly, attempting to exploit weaknesses in the Allied lines. The fighting was intense, as armored vehicles, artillery, and infantry clashed along roads, hedgerows, and villages. Allied commanders anticipated counterattacks. Tanks, artillery, and infantry were strategically positioned to absorb and repel enemy advances. Coordination between beach sectors allowed reinforcements to flow where they were most needed. Engineers repaired roads, cleared obstacles, and ensured that supply lines remained open despite the chaos. The German attacks varied in intensity. Some struck with armored columns supported by artillery, while others relied on infantry infiltrating isolated positions. Soldiers on the ground faced relentless pressure, requiring rapid adaptation and disciplined execution. Small unit leadership became crucial. Officers had to make instant tactical decisions under fire to prevent breaches. Despite the ferocity of the attacks, the Allies held the line. Superior coordination, air support, and effective use of artillery prevented the Germans from regaining lost ground. Every soldier's action, from firing on advancing tanks to securing flanks, was vital in maintaining the integrity of the invasion front. By nightfall, German counterattacks had been largely contained, and the Allied beachheads remained secure. Casualties were significant, but the ability to withstand these assaults solidified the foothold in Normandy. The resilience of the troops, combined with logistical and tactical ingenuity, transformed the invasion from a risky landing into a sustainable operation. The first 24 hours after D-Day had demonstrated the Allies' ability to plan, adapt, and execute under extreme conditions. German counterattacks tested their resolve, but the cohesion and determination of the multinational forces ensured that the invasion would continue. The stage was now set for the push deeper into occupied France, marking the beginning of the end for Nazi control in Western Europe. As the first day of D-Day progressed, the success of the beach landings and airborne operations depended on a steady flow of reinforcements and supplies. Paratroopers and glider-borne troops, already behind enemy lines, required ammunition, food, medical supplies, and reinforcements to maintain their positions and continue disrupting German defenses. Allies relied heavily on their air superiority to achieve this. Transport planes and gliders flew across the English Channel, delivering troops and supplies to strategically critical areas. Pilots navigated anti-aircraft fire and unpredictable weather, often landing in small, improvised zones behind enemy lines. Soldiers quickly unloaded cargo, distributing ammunition, medical kits, and rations to exhausted paratroopers. Gliders also brought light artillery, jeeps, and specialized equipment to support the operations. Coordination between air and ground units was vital. Signals, flares, and pre-arranged markers guided pilots to drop zones, minimizing the risk of accidents or misdrops. Even under the threat of enemy fire, the efficiency and speed of these operations ensured that paratroopers could hold bridges, ambush German reinforcements, and prepare for the arrival of troops from the beaches. The logistical effort extended beyond simple delivery. Medics treated wounded soldiers as supplies arrived, engineers repaired roads, and officers adjusted strategies based on real-time information. This continuous flow of support maintained momentum and prevented isolated units from being overwhelmed by German counterattacks. Airborne support showcased the combined effectiveness of planning, bravery, and improvisation. It was not merely about sending supplies, it was about sustaining the fight, reinforcing morale, and ensuring that every soldier could continue their critical mission. The efforts of pilots, glider crews, and ground troops working in concert exemplified the complexity and coordination required for such a massive invasion. By evening, the reinforcement and resupply operations had bolstered the paratroopers' positions. Bridges were held, towns were secured, and the chaos of the night had been transformed into a stable front. The successful integration of air support proved that D-Day was more than a single landing. It was a multi-dimensional operation that required courage, precision, and relentless determination. To sustain the Allied invasion beyond the first day, A reliable supply line was essential. With Normandy's ports heavily defended or destroyed by German forces, the Allies engineered an audacious solution: the Mulberry harbors. These temporary artificial harbors were designed to facilitate the continuous flow of troops, vehicles, and supplies directly onto the beaches. Construction began immediately after the initial landings. Massive concrete caissons, floating roadways, and piers were towed across the channel and assembled under the threat of enemy fire and unpredictable tides. Engineers and naval crews worked tirelessly, assembling components with precision to create functional harbors capable of handling thousands of tons of material daily. The Mulberry harbors were a feat of engineering and logistics. They allowed tanks, trucks, and supplies to reach the front lines without relying on captured ports, which were heavily fortified or unusable. Every piece of equipment had to be placed accurately to withstand the harsh conditions of the channel and ongoing enemy attacks. German forces attempted to disrupt these operations, firing artillery and launching air attacks. Allied troops defended the harbors with anti-aircraft guns, while naval vessels patrolled the surrounding waters. Despite these threats, construction continued, driven by the necessity of sustaining the invasion. The success of the Mulberry harbors exemplified Allied ingenuity and determination. They transformed the beaches from temporary landing zones into permanent functioning supply bases, ensuring that troops advancing inland could continue to receive reinforcements, food, and ammunition. By establishing this lifeline, the Allies could maintain momentum and secure a foothold in Normandy that would become the foundation for liberation across France. The Mulberry harbors were more than structures. They were symbols of planning, coordination, and resolve. Their presence ensured that the logistical challenges of an amphibious invasion were met with innovation and efficiency, turning a precarious landing into a sustained campaign. Securing the beaches was only the beginning. The Allies now faced the daunting task of breaking out from Normandy and capturing key inland objectives. The city of Cannes, a strategic hub with road and rail connections, became a focal point of this effort. Its capture would allow the Allies to advance deeper into occupied France and disrupt German defensive operations. British forces, primarily the 3rd Infantry Division and supporting armor, advanced cautiously but relentlessly toward Cannes. German troops had fortified the city with bunkers, artillery, and machine gun nests, making the advance costly and slow. The Allies relied on combined arms tactics, with infantry coordinating closely with tanks, artillery, and air support to overcome entrenched positions. Fierce battles erupted in and around the city. Villages were contested, roads became killing zones, and hedgerows provided cover for ambushes. Every street and building became a potential battlefield, requiring close-quarter combat and careful planning. Casualties mounted, but each gain brought the Allies closer to the strategic objective. Air support played a crucial role. Allied bombers targeted German fortifications and supply lines, while fighter planes engaged enemy aircraft to maintain air superiority. Artillery barrages softened defenses ahead of infantry advances, while reconnaissance units identified enemy positions and movement. The coordination of these elements allowed the Allies to maintain momentum despite German resistance. By mid-July, after weeks of heavy fighting, British and Canadian forces secured key positions around Cannes, though the city itself remained partially contested. The battle demonstrated the importance of coordination, logistics, and persistence in overcoming a well-prepared enemy. The struggle for Cannes would continue in subsequent operations, but the breakout marked a decisive step in the Allies' campaign to liberate Normandy. After weeks of grueling fighting along the Normandy front, American forces prepared for Operation Cobra, a bold plan designed to break out from the constrained beachheads and punch through German defenses. The goal was to create a corridor through which the Allies could advance rapidly into France, exploiting the stretched German lines and establishing momentum for liberation. The operation began with an intense aerial bombardment. Strategic bombers dropped thousands of tons of explosives on German positions, aiming to shatter fortifications, disorient defenders, and create opportunities for ground forces. Smoke and chaos engulfed the battlefield. forcing German troops to retreat or become pinned in their positions. Following the bombardment, American infantry and armored units advanced with precision. Tanks led the way, crushing obstacles and suppressing enemy positions, while infantry exploited gaps created by the bombardment. Coordination with artillery and air support ensured that German counterattacks were repelled and lines of advance remained open. Operation Cobra relied on speed, surprise, and overwhelming firepower. The Americans faced challenges including rugged terrain, hedgerows, and residual pockets of resistance. Yet, the disciplined execution of the plan allowed them to push deep into German-held territory. Villages were captured, supply lines secured, and German units were forced into retreat, signaling a decisive shift in the campaign. The breakthrough demonstrated the effectiveness of combined arms warfare and highlighted the importance of meticulous planning, intelligence, and coordination. It also revealed the cumulative effect of weeks of attrition on German forces, whose morale and capacity to resist were rapidly deteriorating. By the end of the first day of Operation Cobra, American forces had created a corridor several kilometers wide, enabling the rapid advance of follow-on troops. This marked the beginning of a broader liberation effort in Normandy, setting the stage for the eventual encirclement of German forces in the region and the liberation of France. Operation Cobra exemplified strategic audacity and the culmination of months of preparation, coordination, and courage. It transformed the static, hard-fought battlefields of Normandy into a dynamic campaign of movement and momentum, demonstrating that careful planning and decisive action could overcome even the most formidable defenses. By August 1944, the Allies had gained momentum in Normandy, and the next critical objective was the Falaise Pocket, a trap designed to encircle and destroy the retreating German forces. The goal was to cut off their escape routes, capturing or eliminating a large portion of the German army and securing a decisive advantage in the campaign. Allied forces advanced from multiple directions. American, British, and Canadian troops pushed toward Falaise from the north and west, while armored divisions maneuvered to block eastern and southern escape routes. The Germans, already weakened by continuous combat and air attacks, scrambled to organize a coherent retreat. The chaotic withdrawal created both opportunities and challenges for the Allies. Inside the pocket, fighting was fierce. Streets, towns, and rural roads became deadly arenas where infantry, tanks, and artillery clashed. German troops attempted to break out, while Allied forces closed the encirclement. Every bridge, hedgerow, and crossroads became a strategic objective. Soldiers faced the chaos of close-quarters combat, relentless artillery, and airstrikes targeting retreating units. Air support was decisive. Allied fighter-bombers attacked fleeing convoys, preventing reinforcements and supply from reaching the German lines. Infantry and armor pressed the encirclement, forcing enemy soldiers into surrender or destruction. The coordination between air, land, and armored units ensured that the Falaise Pocket became a deadly trap rather than an escape route. By the end of the battle, tens of thousands of German troops were captured or destroyed, effectively crippling their forces in Normandy. The encirclement marked a turning point in the campaign, enabling the Allies to advance toward Paris and beyond with reduced resistance. The Falaise Pocket demonstrated the effectiveness of combined arms operations, precise planning, and relentless pursuit in modern warfare. Following the success in Normandy, Allied forces turned their attention to liberating Paris. August 1944 was a critical moment. The city, occupied since 1940, had endured years of oppression under German control. The liberation of Paris was both a military and symbolic objective, representing freedom and the reclamation of France's heart. As Allied columns approached from the west and south, French resistance fighters inside the city began uprisings, targeting German garrisons, disrupting communications, and seizing key locations. Their actions slowed German movements and provided vital intelligence to the advancing Allied forces. The synergy between resistance and Allies was instrumental in minimizing destruction and accelerating the liberation. American and French units entered the city cautiously, encountering pockets of German resistance but generally welcomed by the population. Soldiers advanced through streets adorned with barricades, overcoming snipers, machine guns, and isolated fortifications. Tanks provided cover, while infantry secured key points such as bridges, government buildings, and railways. The liberation was a mix of combat and jubilation. As German forces surrendered or fled, Parisians emerged from hiding, waving flags, cheering, and embracing the soldiers. Yet the joy was tempered by the reality of casualties and destruction from both occupation and the ongoing fighting. Commanders ensured discipline, preventing unnecessary violence and securing order as the city transitioned from occupation to freedom. By late August, Paris was fully liberated. The operation demonstrated the effectiveness of cooperation between regular Allied forces and local resistance, highlighting the combination of military planning, intelligence, and local initiative. The city's liberation boosted morale across Europe, inspiring occupied nations and signaling that the Allies were advancing relentlessly toward Germany. Liberation of Paris was more than a military victory. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the human desire for freedom. Soldiers, resistance fighters, and civilians collectively reclaimed the city, turning years of fear and oppression into celebration and determination for the continued fight to end the war. Following the liberation of Paris, Allied forces pressed forward toward the Seine River, eager to exploit the weakened German positions in northern France. The advance was a combination of rapid movement and careful planning, aiming to maintain momentum while avoiding overextension. Logistics, reconnaissance, and coordination between infantry, armor, and air support were critical for success. American and British units advanced along multiple routes, capturing towns, bridges, and supply points. German forces, though battered, attempted delaying actions to slow the Allied advance. Ambushes, roadblocks, and occasional counterattacks forced the Allies to stay alert, but superior numbers, mobility, and air superiority enabled them to overcome resistance efficiently. Air reconnaissance played a vital role. Pilots identified German positions, troop movements, and weak points along the roads to the Seine, allowing commanders to allocate forces strategically. Armored units spearheaded the advance, clearing obstacles and engaging enemy fortifications, while infantry followed to secure the liberated towns and maintain supply lines. The advance toward the Seine was marked by both combat and liberation. Civilians emerged from hiding to welcome Allied troops, providing intelligence and celebrating the retreat of German forces. Every town taken boosted morale for soldiers and local populations alike, reinforcing the sense that liberation was spreading inexorably across France. By the time the Allies reached the Seine, the German army was in disarray. Bridges were captured intact, supply lines secured, and key positions held. The momentum generated during this phase enabled the Allies to prepare for the next stage of the campaign, crossing the river and advancing toward the heart of Germany. The push to the Seine demonstrated how combined arms intelligence and rapid maneuver could translate battlefield victories into strategic advantage. The Seine River represented a natural barrier and a strategic obstacle for Allied forces. Crossing it successfully would open the way for the liberation of northern France and prepare the Allies for the push toward Belgium and Germany. The operation required careful planning, coordination, and determination, combining infantry, engineers, armor, and air support. Allied engineers worked tirelessly to construct pontoon bridges, repair damaged crossings, and secure riverbanks. Infantry units cleared German defenders entrenched on the opposite side, often engaging in fierce firefights near towns and villages along the river. Tanks provided cover across the open terrain, suppressing enemy positions and ensuring a safe crossing for troops. Air superiority was critical. Allied aircraft patrolled the skies, attacking enemy positions and preventing reinforcements from reaching the riverfront. Bombardments softened German defenses while fighter planes engaged enemy aircraft attempting to disrupt the crossing. The combination of air, ground, and engineering operations ensured the success of the crossing. Despite these efforts, the crossing was not without danger. Soldiers faced sniper fire, artillery, and obstacles designed to hinder their advance. Leadership at the small unit and divisional level proved crucial as officers coordinated movements under fire, directing reinforcements and maintaining the momentum of the advance. By the end of the operation, the Seine was crossed, German forces were pushed back, and Allied supply lines were secured on both sides of the river. This strategic victory demonstrated the importance of combined arms, engineering ingenuity, and coordination. It marked another significant step in the liberation of Western Europe and showcased the Allies' ability to transform difficult terrain into a battlefield advantage. The crossing of the Seine set the stage for the rapid advance through northern France, Belgium, and eventually into Germany itself. It highlighted how careful planning, bravery, and adaptability could turn natural obstacles into opportunities, ensuring that the Allied campaign maintained both speed and effectiveness. After securing northern France, Allied forces turned toward Belgium, aiming to liberate key cities and secure strategic ports for supply lines. Antwerp, with its deep-water port, became a critical objective. Its capture would enable the Allies to sustain the advancing armies while denying the Germans vital logistical hubs. Allied units, composed of American, British, and Canadian troops, advanced rapidly through the Belgian countryside. German forces, though battered and in retreat, mounted delaying actions to protect vital cities and disrupt the Allied supply chain. Villages and towns along the way became contested zones, with skirmishes and artillery exchanges marking the advance. Resistance movements within Belgium played a pivotal role. Local fighters sabotaged bridges, provided intelligence, and coordinated with Allied units, easing the path for the advancing troops. Their contribution allowed Allied forces to move faster, capture critical positions, and minimize civilian casualties. The approach to Antwerp required careful coordination. Engineers repaired roads, cleared mines, and secured bridges. Infantry and armored units engaged German rearguards, while artillery and aircraft provided suppression and cover. Civilians, aware of the approaching liberation, often cheered the troops, waving flags and assisting where possible. By early September 1944, Allied forces entered Antwerp largely intact, surprising German defenders who had expected more resistance. The port was secured with minimal destruction, enabling the rapid arrival of supplies and reinforcements for the continuing campaign into Germany. The liberation of Belgium, beginning with Antwerp, demonstrated the combination of speed, planning, and cooperation between Allied units and local resistance. The operation also underscored the psychological impact of liberation. Civilians celebrated with exuberance, while German forces faced demoralization and the realization that the Allies were advancing inexorably toward the heart of Europe. Antwerp became a symbol of strategic foresight, the importance of logistics, and the determination of a multinational Allied force. After capturing Antwerp, the Allies faced a critical challenge: the Scheldt estuary, the waterway that connected the port to the sea. German forces still controlled the estuary, preventing supply ships from reaching Antwerp and threatening the operational effectiveness of the advancing armies. Securing the estuary was vital to ensure a steady flow of reinforcements, food, and equipment. The operation was complex and dangerous. The terrain included flooded fields, dikes, and heavily fortified German positions. The Canadian First Army, supported by British units, was tasked with clearing the estuary. Troops faced machine gun nests, artillery, and booby-trapped obstacles designed to halt any advance. Careful planning and coordination between infantry, armor, engineers, and artillery were essential. Engineers drained flooded fields where possible, built bridges, and cleared minefields under constant enemy fire. Infantry units advanced cautiously, suppressing German positions and capturing strong points. Tanks and artillery provided support, while aircraft strafed and bombed enemy fortifications. Coordination with naval units ensured safe movement along waterways and prevented German reinforcements from exploiting the terrain. The fighting was grueling. Soldiers navigated mud, water, and obstacles while facing entrenched defenders determined to hold the estuary. Small unit leadership was critical, as officers directed advances, reinforced positions, and adapted to changing battlefield conditions. Every gain was hard-won, with courage and discipline defining the campaign. By early November 1944, the Scheldt estuary was fully cleared, allowing Allied supply lines to Antwerp to function efficiently. This success ensured that the Allies could maintain momentum into Belgium, the Netherlands, and eventually Germany. The operation highlighted the importance of logistics, combined arms coordination, and perseverance under difficult conditions. The clearing of the Scheldt turned Antwerp into a fully operational port, directly impacting the speed and sustainability of Allied operations. It demonstrated that even after significant territorial gains, securing supply routes and maintaining operational capability were as critical as battlefield victories. In September 1944, the Allies launched Operation Market Garden, an ambitious plan to bypass the Siegfried Line and enter Germany's industrial heartland. The operation combined a massive airborne assault with a rapid ground advance, aiming to capture key bridges in the Netherlands and secure a corridor for Allied forces. It was a bold gamble that relied on speed, coordination, and surprise. The airborne component, Market, dropped thousands of paratroopers behind German lines at Eindhoven, Nijmegen, and Arnhem. They faced immediate challenges, scattered drops, unexpected German resistance, and difficult terrain that complicated assembly and movement. Despite these obstacles, airborne units fought tenaciously to capture bridges, hold key positions, and link with advancing ground forces. Ground forces, Garden, advanced rapidly along a single highway to relieve the airborne troops and secure the corridor. Progress was hampered by German counterattacks, destroyed infrastructure, and logistical challenges. The narrow advance made it vulnerable to ambushes, but armor and infantry pressed forward relentlessly. The operation's highlight was the Battle of Arnhem. British paratroopers faced overwhelming German forces, including SS Panzer divisions, and were unable to fully secure the bridge. Despite extraordinary courage, the airborne forces suffered heavy casualties. Elsewhere, however, the operation achieved partial success. Bridges at Eindhoven and Nijmegen were captured, enabling further advances into the Netherlands. Operation Market Garden demonstrated both the audacity and risks of combined airborne ground operations. While it did not fully achieve its strategic objectives, it provided invaluable experience in coordination, logistics, and rapid maneuver warfare. It also underscored the resilience and bravery of the soldiers who fought under extreme conditions, facing uncertainty, overwhelming odds, and the chaos of battle. As the Allies advanced toward Germany in late 1944, Hitler launched a surprise winter counteroffensive in the Ardennes forest, known as the Battle of the Bulge. Its goal was to split the Allied front, recapture Antwerp, and destabilize morale. The dense forests, snow, and cold weather compounded the difficulties for both sides, creating a brutal and desperate battle. German forces initially achieved surprise, exploiting poor visibility and weakly defended sectors. Tanks, infantry, and artillery pushed into Allied lines, creating a pronounced bulge in the front. American troops, often inexperienced, bore the brunt of the attack, facing encirclement, supply shortages, and harsh winter conditions. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, with towns and villages occupied and contested. Despite initial setbacks, Allied forces mounted a determined defense. Units held key towns such as Bastogne, where the 101st Airborne famously resisted repeated attacks under siege conditions. Artillery, air support, and reinforcements were coordinated to slow and eventually halt the German advance. Leadership at both tactical and strategic levels proved critical in maintaining morale and organizing counterattacks. The battle tested endurance, discipline, and ingenuity. Soldiers improvised defensive positions, navigated snowy terrain, and maintained communications despite enemy pressure. Air support, once weather cleared, devastated German supply lines and armor, tipping the balance in favor of the Allies. By late January 1945, the German offensive was fully repelled. The Battle of the Bulge had inflicted heavy casualties on both sides, but the Allies had held the line and regained lost territory. The operation demonstrated the importance of resilience, preparation, and adaptability in warfare, proving that even a surprise counteroffensive could be overcome by coordinated defense and determined soldiers. The battle also highlighted the human dimension of war, courage, suffering, and sacrifice under extreme conditions. The winter of 1944 force became a symbol of the Allies' ability to withstand adversity and maintain momentum toward the ultimate defeat of Nazi Germany. By early 1945, Allied forces had reached the Rhine River, one of Germany's last natural defensive barriers. Crossing it was both a strategic and symbolic milestone, opening the way into the heart of the Third Reich. Operation Plunder, the carefully coordinated assault, aimed to breach German defenses and establish a foothold on the eastern bank. Allied engineers and infantry worked under constant threat. Pontoon bridges were constructed across the river, allowing tanks, artillery, and supply convoys to support the assault. Air and artillery bombardments targeted German fortifications, creating confusion and weakening defenses. Paratroopers and airborne units secured the flanks and key towns, preventing German counterattacks from compromising the crossing. The crossing was perilous. Soldiers faced machine gun fire, artillery, and fortified positions on the opposite bank. Tanks and infantry coordinated closely, with armored units providing cover while infantry secured bridgeheads. Engineers braved enemy fire to complete pontoon bridges and repair damaged infrastructure, ensuring that reinforcements and supplies could flow continuously. Despite the dangers, Allied forces successfully established multiple crossings. German resistance, though determined, was fragmented, and the Allies exploited every breakthrough to expand their bridgeheads and secure towns along the Rhine. The crossing demonstrated the effectiveness of combined arms, meticulous planning, and relentless determination. The operation had profound strategic and psychological impact. It confirmed that Germany's natural defenses could be overcome and that the Allies were capable of penetrating deep into enemy territory. The Rhine crossing set the stage for the final push into Germany, signaling that the collapse of the Third Reich was imminent. After crossing the Rhine, Allied forces advanced rapidly into Germany's industrial heartland, the Ruhr. This region, packed with factories, railways, and resource centers, was crucial to the German war effort. Encircling and capturing it would significantly weaken Germany's capacity to continue the war. Allied strategy involved a pincer movement. American, British, and Canadian forces approached from multiple directions to trap German forces in a large pocket. The objective was to prevent retreat, cut off supply lines, and force the surrender of thousands of enemy soldiers. Artillery, air support, and armored units played critical roles in maintaining pressure and preventing breakout attempts. Fighting in the Ruhr was intense and urban in nature. Cities, factories, and rail yards became battlegrounds, with street-to-street combat and fortified positions slowing the advance. German soldiers, though outnumbered and demoralized, fought tenaciously, using the industrial terrain to mount stubborn resistance. Infantry, tanks, and artillery engaged in coordinated operations to secure objectives and tighten the encirclement. By April 1945, the Ruhr pocket was completely sealed. Tens of thousands of German troops surrendered, and critical industrial assets were captured or destroyed. The encirclement demonstrated the effectiveness of strategic planning, mobility, and combined arms tactics in modern warfare. It also highlighted the cumulative impact of months of relentless Allied pressure, attrition, and superior coordination. The fall of the Ruhr was a decisive blow to the German war effort. It crippled industrial production, disrupted logistics, and accelerated the collapse of the Third Reich. For the Allies, it was a major milestone, proving that coordinated strategy, overwhelming force, and determination could achieve decisive results. The encirclement also carried symbolic weight. It represented the destruction of the core of Germany's war machinery and the impending end of Nazi control in Europe. Soldiers, officers, and planners witnessed firsthand how meticulous preparation, combined with courage and perseverance, could bring a nation to its knees and hasten the end of a devastating conflict. By April 1945, the Allies had reached the Elbe River, Germany's last major defensive barrier before the heartland. Crossing it was essential to bring the war to an end. Operation Plunder's lessons were applied. Infantry, armor, engineers, and air support coordinated meticulously to breach German defenses. Allied engineers constructed pontoon bridges and cleared riverbanks of obstacles. Infantry advanced under fire, securing landing zones, while tanks provided covering fire. German troops, depleted and demoralized, resisted fiercely, but could not hold the multiple crossing points. Air support and artillery softened enemy positions, ensuring that reinforcements could cross safely. Civilians cautiously observed from a distance, hopeful that liberation and peace were imminent. By successfully crossing the Elbe, the Allies positioned themselves to converge with Soviet forces from the east, signaling that the Third Reich's collapse was inevitable. As the Allies approached Berlin from the west, German forces mounted desperate defensive efforts. The city itself was heavily fortified, and street-by-street combat was anticipated. The goal was to encircle the city, preventing escape and reducing the German capacity to continue organized resistance. Allied troops advanced through villages, forests, and rivers leading to Berlin. Engineers cleared obstacles, while tanks and artillery engaged entrenched positions. German troops, weakened by attrition, fought tenaciously, but were unable to stop the encirclement. Air support targeted strategic defensive points, aiding the ground advance. The encirclement demonstrated the cumulative effect of months of continuous Allied pressure. German morale collapsed as cities fell, and supply lines were cut, paving the way for the final liberation of occupied territories. April 1945 marked the fall of Berlin. Allied forces, in coordination with the Soviet advance from the east, surrounded the city. Urban warfare ensued as German defenders made their last stand. Infantry, tanks, and artillery fought through streets and buildings, securing critical positions. Airstrikes softened German fortifications while engineers cleared rubble and bridges to allow reinforcements. Civilians, caught between combat and occupation, fled or sought shelter. German resistance was fragmented and exhausted, unable to repel the overwhelming Allied force. By late April, Berlin fell. The capture of the city signified the collapse of Nazi control and the imminent end of World War II in Europe. Allied and Soviet forces met, linking the fronts and confirming victory in Europe. After Berlin's fall, remaining German forces faced inevitable surrender. On May 4, 1945, German troops in northwest Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands capitulated at Lüneburg Heath. The surrender formalized the end of organized German resistance in the region. Allied officers coordinated acceptance of German troops, ensuring orderly disarmament and preventing unnecessary casualties. Soldiers were processed, supplies secured, and civilians freed from occupation. The surrender represented the culmination of months of relentless Allied campaigns across Europe. With Germany's surrender on May 8, 1945, Europe celebrated the end of 6 years of devastating conflict. Cities erupted in joy, flags waved, and soldiers and civilians alike expressed relief and hope. The Allies reflected on the sacrifices, bravery, and coordination that made victory possible. Parades, reunions, and commemorations took place across liberated territories. Soldiers and officers honored their fallen comrades, recognizing the immense human cost of the campaign. Civilians rebuilt homes and communities, eager to reclaim normalcy. Victory in Europe was not only a military achievement, but a profound moment of human resilience and unity. Victory came at a tremendous cost. Millions of soldiers and civilians lost their lives, and Europe bore the scars of devastation. Remembering the fallen became a central part of post-war reflection. Memorials, ceremonies, and education honored those who sacrificed everything to secure freedom. The campaign from Normandy to Germany illustrated courage, coordination, and perseverance. Soldiers endured unimaginable hardships, engineers overcame obstacles, and commanders orchestrated complex operations that spanned continents. The legacy of these actions shaped modern military doctrine and the collective memory of nations. Yet, the lessons were not only tactical, they were moral. The horrors witnessed reinforced the imperative to preserve peace, defend human dignity, and prevent the repetition of such destruction. The story of Normandy and the Allied advance is remembered not only for strategy and victory, but for the human spirit that endured, resisted, and ultimately triumphed.